Welcome to Debunking Polygamy Denial. This is a new YouTube channel designed to respond to the historical and doctrinal claims by polygamy deniers, people who deny that Joseph Smith taught and introduced the practice of plural marriage. And they often do this by sharing misleading half-truths and make many false claims. And this is just going to be the first of hopefully many presentations to address the veracity of those claims. So to start off, one of the most common claims made by polygamy deniers is that everything comes from later Utah sources tying Joseph Smith to plural marriage. They say, quote, "There are no contemporary sources of Joseph teaching or practicing plural marriage." However, this is blatantly untrue. While it is true that there is not a ton of historical documentation regarding Joseph Smith's teaching and practicing plural marriage that's contemporary to his lifetime, because it was a secret doctrine and they were very concerned about wanting to keep it secret when it was introduced. The reality is enough people were taught about it and there was enough word spread about it that there were quite a number of contemporary sources, both antagonistic sources from like hostile places like John C. Bennett. The Warsaw Signal publishes some allegations regarding Joseph Smith's practice of polygamy, etc. But at the same time, there were also friendly contemporary sources that were kept privately, which include, but are not limited to, the July 12th, 1842 revelation for Sarah Ann Whitney to marry Joseph Smith, the August 18th, 1842 letter to Newell Case, Elizabeth, and Sarah Ann Whitney regarding wanting them to come for further ordinances after Joseph had just previously been married to Sarah Ann Whitney. Then there's the blessing to Sarah Ann Whitney on March 23rd, 1843, which alludes to her entering into the new and everlasting covenant, i.e. the new and everlasting covenant of marriage through her eternal marriage sealing through Joseph Smith. There's William Clayton's Nauvoo Journal, which documents Joseph's practice and teaching of plural marriage in 1843, and the introduction of D&C 132, and the conflicts that Joseph had with Emma over plural marriage are recorded in William Clayton's journal. Then there's the June 1843 letter by Blake Kimball to Heber C. Kimball, which references Joseph B. Noble's the first known pregnancy from plural marriage in Nauvoo of Joseph B. Noble's plural wife, Sarah Ali, as well as it documents Joseph had been teaching plural marriage to Parley P. Pratt and Mary Ann Pratt. Then we have the July 12th, 1843 revelation, D&C 132, a contemporary copy that was recorded by Horace K. Whitney. It was recorded by Joseph Kingsbury. And Horace K. Whitney also made an early copy of it in winter quarters in 1848. Then we have Hiram Smith's August 12th, 1843, teaching to the Nauvoo High Council, which on plural marriage, which is recorded in Franklin D. Richards' journal. His scriptural items notebook, where he records about Hiram teaching, referencing Old Testament Levirate marriages and how that practice would have to be restored as part of the restoration of all things. Then we have the Lot family Bible recording their daughter, Melissa Lott's marriage to Joseph Smith. Then we have the January 3rd, 1844 Nauvoo City Council minutes, where it records discussion involving William Law and one of the local bishops regarding spiritual wifery. And this individual quoted William Law mentioning that Joseph and Hiram had blown spiritual wifery up before the High Council and before the elders' quorum. And so this is an interesting statement in that it references Hiram Smith's reading the D&C 132 to the High Council, on which we believe occurred on August 12th, 1843, as well as teaching the revelation to the elders' quorum, which is something that isn't as well documented, but this is a contemporary a reference in Joseph Smith's lifetime to the fact that it had also been taught to the Nauvoo elders' quorum. And what's significant is in response to this allegation about the spiritual wife system, Joseph said, the minutes just record that the mayor, i.e. Joseph Smith, explained the spiritual wife system and said that a man who promised to keep a secret and did not keep it should not be trusted. So it's significant that it seems like the minutes do not seem to indicate he's denying what William Smith said. I mean, excuse me, that William Law said, but that he is just saying that a man who promised to keep a secret and did not keep it should not be trusted. Additionally, the August 18th, 1844 trial minutes make reference to Joseph Smith teaching plural marriage, as recalled by Nauvoo policeman John Scott. And then the June 1844 Nauvoo City Council minutes, in response to the Nauvoo expositor, make reference by Joseph and Hiram to the fact that there was indeed a revelation on eternal marriage and ancient polygamy. They tried to say it was ancient, but not to the present time. That was read, indeed received and read to the High Council. And what's significant is they don't publish this revelation. They just try to say that, or deny that there was a revelation. They just try to say that the Nauvoo expositor was misinterpreting that revelation. So these are just 10 contemporary sources off of the top of my head. There are many other contemporary sources, but I just want to pick out 10 friendly ones as examples. And we will, in future presentations, go into these different evidences of Joseph Smith introducing the principle of plural marriage. So one of the other common things that's brought up is there's claims of historical fabrication in Utah Mormonism, that they allegedly rewrote documents, that they were fraudulent in doing so. And in my opinion, and this is a clear misrepresentation of the historical evidence. So there is no evidence that any historical documents were forged. Entries in Joseph Smith's journal were edited for publication. Some entries were removed and some were fleshed out, where they expanded the entry to add more to it in historical manuscripts for publication in the history of the church. But the original journals and documents were preserved without tampering. Now, why would they? This is not evidence of a nefarious conspiracy if they preserved the original documents. The fact that they preserved them shows that they were just merely editing them for publication, and there was nothing nefarious about it. So in contrast to Utah Mormonism generally being forthright and honest in their histories, and no compelling evidence of manipulation and dishonesty in regards to their testimonies about Joseph Smith's teachings, in contrast, RLDS church leaders in the 1800s have serious credibility issues with many of their historical claims they made attempting to contrast Utah Mormonism's historical narratives about Joseph Smith's teachings, the introduction of polygamy, and temple ordinances. So what's significant is William Smith, throughout the 1840s and 1850s, made many railing accusations and all sorts of claims of awfulness against Brigham Young, against the Quorum of the 12, called them usurpers and tyrants and not legitimate in their authority and their leadership. But what's interesting is privately, in several private letters he wrote to in his own handwriting, first to Orson Hyde, then later to Brigham Young, he was trying to get his position back in the Utah church. And in his letter to Orson Hyde on June 22nd, 1847, he said, quote, "I hope Brother Brigham will forgive me, for I have said many hard things concerning him, and yet I know him to be a man of God. He shall never complain of me hereafter," if only that would have been true, "for I have decreed that my tongue shall no more speak evil of the ruler of my people, him whom God has honored." If only that would have been true. "I know that I have sinned against heaven in the light of my brethren, and am no longer worthy to be called thy brother." Now, Orson Hyde said that if you are sincere in your repentance, you need to pay your own way to travel out to the brethren and, meet with them in council to do so. And Orson Hyde said, just as I had to do when I had broken fellowship and I had to go to work cutting wood until I could make enough money to afford to travel to reunite with the saints. And William Smith instead was like, how dare he say that I should go chop wood like he did. And, he said, I'm an apostle. I shouldn't have to, do that. He kind of had an attitude. And this is something George A. Smith mentioned, that William Smith wanted to live off of the backs of the saints. And he was basically hoping that they would send the means for him to gather with them and restore him to his leadership in the LDS church. But when he broke from the other apostles in the late summer of 1845, the other apostles were glad to be rid of him because he was not a man of good moral character. and he had brought a ton of problems upon the saints in both his in his leadership in the East. He was not a man of God, and he was not a man of integrity. And I think that needs to definitely be weighed when people try to quote things that he would allegedly say about, or what he would write about Brigham Young and the other apostles and Utah Mormonism. So again, in 1855, William Smith again tried to get his place back in the Utah Mormon Church, writing to Brigham Young, "I have rights, Brother Brigham. I want them, and it is regards to my apostleship. Now deal justly with me upon this matter, and I am your man and your true-hearted friend and brother until death." Yeah, isn't that funny? He says, if you just give me my apostleship, I will be your man and your true-hearted friend and brother until death. So again, a few months later in 1855, he again wrote, "I have never considered, nor am I willing to relinquish claims that justly belong to me in the church and kingdom of God. Such a sacrifice would be dearer to me than life itself. Nor do I believe that if Joseph were alive and occupying the presidency of the church, that he would do me the first principle of injustice in relation to this affair. And now, President Young, I appeal to you to look into this matter, and if a reconciliation or a settlement of our long-standing difficulties can be had upon honorable principles in regards to all parties I want that it should be done. So again, he's trying to wiggle his way back into authority in the Utah church, and Brigham Young doesn't even respond to these letters. These are just letters that have been, filed, that were just filed away in the Brigham Young office papers and the letter books. And, it's the apostles were happy to be rid of him because he was not a man of principle, and he was a man of very questionable moral integrity. And he would go on to just lambast Brigham Young and the 12 even further because Brigham Young ignored this. He went on to accuse Willard Richards of poisoning Samuel Smith, which is something that he first would make a claim of in 1857. But he said he had knowledge of, in his newspaper in 1850, he knew that he alleged that Samuel had been poisoned. And if it really was Brigham Young and the other apostles who were behind him being poisoned, then why would he be wanting to reunite with a church that was usurped by murderers? It doesn't make sense. The allegation is spurious and should not be taken seriously. So, unfortunately, Joseph Smith III, like his uncle William, was less than truthful in his historical writings and his historical perspective. And in fact, writing to his uncle William about writing a biography of himself, he cautioned him to be very careful what he remembered regarding Joseph and Hiram and the origins of plural marriage in the early church. He wrote, quote, "In regard to the matter of your biography, I have long been engaged in removing from father's memory and from the early church the stigma and blame thrown upon them because of polygamy, and have at last long lived to see the cloud rapidly lifting. And I would not consent to see further blame attached by a blunder now. Now, therefore, uncle, bear in mind our standing today before the world as defenders of Mormonism free from polygamy, and go ahead with your personal recollections of Joseph and Hiram. Your New York forum will give it a big boom in advertising, and if you are the wise man I take you to be, you will fail to remember anything contrary to the lofty standards of character at which we esteem these good men. You can do the cause great good. You can injure it by injudicious sayings." So that's a blatant statement of historical manipulation. If there was a letter like that by Brigham Young to someone telling them to be careful what they write and publish, that would give cause to believe that, they were not being truthful in their historical narrative. But, it's Joseph Smith III in the RLDS church that was not being honest in their historical narrative. There's no evidence of this kind of manipulation of history and testimony existing in the Brighamite church. So, but even on top of that, there's contradicting evidence from the RLDS church. So you might ask, why would he be so concerned about people possibly saying that Joseph and Hiram were the ones who originated polygamy? Because he knew that there were other people from Nauvoo Mormonism in the RLDS church who didn't follow Brigham Young and didn't believe in polygamy, who testified that polygamy started with Joseph and Hiram. So some significant individuals from Nauvoo Mormonism who gave this kind of testimony privately would include William Marks, Ebenezer Robinson, and James Whitehead, among others. So this is significant. In the RLDS First Presidency and Quorum of the 12 on May 1st, 1865, the question arose as to whether Joseph the Martyr taught the doctrine of polygamy. President William Marks said Brother Hiram came to his place once and told him he did not believe in it and he was going to see Joseph about it. And if he had a revelation on the subject, he would believe it. And after that, Hiram read a revelation on it to the High Council. And he, Marks, felt it was not true, but he saw the High Council received it. So, and that's, blatantly, and in the RLDS Presidency and Quorum of the 12 Minutes on May 1st, 1865. Then similarly, James White had privately told RLDS, one of the early RLDS leaders, W.W. Blair, in 1874, that he knew that Joseph had introduced polygamy and that Emma had consented and put hands of wives in Joseph's hand. So this is in W.W. Blair's diary on June 17, 1874. James Whitehead says Joseph did teach polygamy and practice it too, that Emma knows it too, that she put hands of wives in Joseph's hand. Whitehead says Alex H. Smith asked him when sleeping at his house in Alton if Joseph did practice and teach polygamy, and Whitehead, told him that he did. What's significant is that when Whitehead was staying with Alexander Smith, Joseph III's younger brother, that occurred on May 14th, 1864, and Alexander wrote a journal entry about how Whitehead told him things that he didn't know and could not understand. And then there is a page torn out of his journal, which right in the middle of James White, this entry about what James Whitehead was telling him. So it's pretty significant that there is, that's one just piece of several significant pieces of evidence of historical tampering in the RLDS Church and destruction of evidence that would indicate that Joseph Smith had introduced the doctrine of plural marriage. So to contrast William Smith's lack of honesty and lack of character and integrity, I want to contrast him with William Clayton, what William Clayton said about polygamy and the introduction of it in a letter to Madison Scott on November 11th, 1871. And this is reading from his own handwriting, so bear with me as I try to discern his handwriting, but thankfully he has way better handwriting than William Smith. So, Madison M. Scott, dear sir, your letter of 23rd June last was received by due course of mail, but owing to my being so very closely confined with public duties, which has almost destroyed my health, I have not answered your letter so promptly as is my practice. My health is yet very poor, but I have resigned the office which was bearing so heavily upon me, and am in hopes to regain my usual sound health. Now, in regards to the subject matter of your letter, it appears to me the principal topic is what is commonly called polygamy, but which I prefer to call celestial marriage. As to young Joseph Smith saying that the church here have apostatized, that we have introduced polygamy, denying bitterly that his father ever had a revelation on the subject, that is all mere tosh. I believe he knows better, and I have often felt sorry to learn that the sons of the prophet should spend their time in contending against pure and holy principle which their father had his blood shed to establish. Let me turn off this. They will have a heavy atonement to make when they meet their father in the next world. They are in the hands of God, and my respect for their father will not permit me to say much about their wicked course, the wicked course of his sons. Now I say to you, and I am ready to testify to all the world, and in which testimony I am most willing to meet all the Latter-day Saints and all apostates in time and through all eternity. I did write the revelation on celestial marriage given through the prophet Joseph Smith on the 12th of July, 1843. When the revelation was written, there was no one present except the prophet Joseph, his brother Hiram, and myself. It was written in the small office upstairs in the rear of the brick store which stood on the banks of the Mississippi River. It took some 3 hours to write it. Joseph dictated sentence by sentence, and I wrote it as he dictated. After the whole was written, Joseph requested me to read it slowly and carefully, which I did, and he then pronounced it correct. The same night, a copy was taken by Bishop Whitney, which copy is now here, and which I know and testify is correct. The original was destroyed by Emma Smith. I again testify that the revelation on polygamy was given through the prophet Joseph on the 12th of July, 1843, and that the prophet Joseph both taught and practiced polygamy. I do positively know and bear testimony to the fact in April 1843, he sealed to me my second wife, my first wife being then living. By my said second wife, I had 2 sons born in Nauvoo. The first one died. The second one is here now and is married. I had the honor to seal one woman to Joseph under his direction. I could name 10 or a dozen of his wives who are living now in this territory, so that for any man to tell me that Joseph did not teach polygamy, he is losing his time, for I know better. It is not hearsay nor opinion with me, for I positively know of what I speak, and I testify to the truth, and shall be willing to meet all opponents on the subject through all eternity. As to the church, here having apostatized, that is all a mere matter of assertion destitute of truth. President Young and his associates are and have been doing everything they can to carry out the plans and instructions of the prophet Joseph, and so eternity will prove to the condemnation and confusion of all their enemies. Anyone that says the contrary does not know Joseph nor the mission the Lord gave him to fulfill. Polygamy is a celestial order, the most sacred and holy that was ever revealed from heaven to man. The revelation of July 12th, 1843 says plainly, to whomsoever this law is revealed, they must and shall obey the same, or they shall be damned, saith the Lord God. How any man who pretends to believe the Bible can fight against polygamy is a mystery to me. Abraham and Jacob were polygamists. One is called the father of the faithful. Of the other is said, in thee and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. So there can be no blessing for the human family only through a polygamist. I do not know where I could get a copy of the revelation, or I would send you one. You may rest assured that no man that fights against polygamy will have the privilege of sitting down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. I must now close. I could say much on the subject did time allow. Truly yours, William Clayton. So that's how I'm going to end this video. I'm just going to ask everyone to like and subscribe if they appreciate this video, and there's going to be more content that covers the history and introduction of plural marriage by the prophet Joseph Smith and responding to common claims made by polygamy deniers on this channel. And so if there are any questions or comments, I'd appreciate having them posted in the comment section below. Thanks.